Welcome to the Real News. I'm Marc Steiner. It's good to have you all with us today. In early May, a group of Israeli settlers arrived with caravans. They set up an illegal outpost on top of Mount Sabih, which is on the outskirts of Beita, which is in the northern occupied West Bank. Since then, every single day for more than 2 months, Palestinian protests against the settlement in the village have been nonstop, every day, every night. The Israeli response to these protests has been severe and deadly, with tear gas, rubber bullets, and live rounds, and casualties. Yumna Patel, the Palestine correspondent from Mondoweiss, went to Beita to cover this story and produced an incredibly powerful short documentary, which we here at The Real News are honored to share with our viewers as part of our partnership with Mondoweiss. And it's an important piece of work. Before we turn it on and let you watch it, which I do want you to do, and you'll love this piece, it's very powerful, we wanted to provide you with some context for the documentary for the continuing violence of the Israeli occupation. For that, I'm joined by Yumna Patel, who joins us once again here from the West Bank on The Real News. And Yumna, welcome. Good to have you with us, as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be back with you guys.
And this short 17-minute documentary, give us some background here. I mean, about what people are about to watch, what they're going to see, some context.
So people are basically, when they watch this short documentary, they're going to get quite a deep dive and a really good insight into what the day-to-day has been like in Beita. And as you mentioned, these protests have literally been nonstop, and that's what we were trying to convey in this film, was to show people that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, people in the village have been out there protesting against the establishment of that outpost on their land. And that means morning, afternoon, and evening. And so we went into the protests. We spoke to just ordinary people that we sort of met while we were reporting. Particularly, we met quite a few young men who were active in the protests. And, everyone was quite, willing to speak to us because people were really adamant that their message get out there. So people can expect, when they watch this film, to get a really good look inside what life has just been like for the people of Beita over the past 2 months, and how they've sort of dropped everything in order to pour all of their energy into fighting the expansion of this illegal outpost on their land.
And just to again give our viewers a sense of what's happening here. I mean, there have been a lot of people injured in this process, and most of the people have been carrying torches and been relatively peaceful. I mean, there are some young people with slingshots, but it's slingshots against drones and machine guns and rubber bullets. And I just talk about you for a moment as a reporter, as a journalist, in the midst of this literal battle and what you went through.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely. It was tough. We were a crew of 4 people, myself, and then we had our cameraman and sound guys and everyone. And we were all geared up. We had our bulletproof vests and our helmets, and we were marked as press, etc., which, as I'm sure you may know, as people might know, in Palestine, that doesn't necessarily protect you. Sometimes being marked as press will even, make you a target. So it was quite frightening at times, because all around you, there's live ammunition that's being fired, sometimes in the middle of the night, and you don't really know where it's coming from. So it wasn't an easy sort of place to be in. It was difficult to navigate at some points, because it also, when you're just thinking about the terrain, we were sort of in the middle of this very hilly and mountainous terrain. It's not like one straight shot where you can see where the soldiers are in front of you. There's, oftentimes there's troops sort of scattered around, and you're kind of coming under fire from all directions. There were lots of other journalists there, that were primarily Palestinian journalists who were covering the story as well. And again, we had our protective gear, but around us, there was thousands of ordinary people. Like you mentioned, some of the young guys had, homemade slingshots that they were using to throw rocks back at the soldiers. But again, there were children, there were the elderly, there were people all around us who, were completely unarmed and were coming under fire from all directions. And as people will see in this documentary, the Israeli forces pretty heavily used drones to fire tear gas. So they would fly the drones up above us and drop tear gas down on the protesters. And the drones were actually being operated by soldiers who were in the outpost. So the drones would come back and forth from the outpost, fly over the protesters, fire on them, and go back and sort of recharge and refuel with more tear gas at the outpost and then come back.
The film here is a 17-minute short film. Beita Is Undefeatable. Inside the struggle to save this Palestinian village from Israeli settlers, produced by Mondoweiss and Yumna Patel, who joins us now, who did this incredible piece of work. Yumna, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you being with us once again. Look forward to many more conversations with you. And folks, watch the film, take it in. It's not easy, but it's important.
So as you can see around us, the protesters are dispersing. People had gathered here on the mountaintop across from Jabal Sabih, across from the Israeli outpost. They've gathered for Friday prayers. People haven't even gotten the chance to start praying yet. Friday prayers hadn't even started yet, and Israeli forces stationed on the mountain started firing tear gas from their tear gas guns and also from drones that they flew overhead and dropped tear gas canisters onto the protesters.
This has been the everyday reality for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank town of Beita for the past 8 weeks. In early May, a group of settlers arrived with caravans and occupied the top of Jabal Sabih, one of the tallest mountains in the Nablus district and a historic landmark in Beita. Since then, the protests in the village have been non-stop, and the Israeli response has been severe.
شوف حاوطوا الجبل كامل، يعني حاولوا يحاوطوا الجبل كامل لحماية قد ايه؟ لحماية 30 مستوطن. 30 مستوطن بيسكنوا في الجبل. اللي هو
والجيش
بيحموهم عشرات الدوريات توصل عليهم الجماعة، عشرات. كل في الهوت بس مئات الجنود اللي بتوصل باصات لغير بتنزلهم مشان يحموا المستوطنين.
Since protests began on Jabal Sabih, Israeli forces have killed 5 Palestinians, 4 residents of Beita, and 1 young man from the nearby village of Yatma. The latest victims of the Beita protests were 2 teenagers, 16-year-old Mohammed Hamayel and 17-year-old Ahmed Bani Shamsa. The 2 were reportedly school friends and were some of the hundreds of Beita's youth who participated in the protests regularly.
بعدين بدي اقول يعني طفل 17 سنه تقتله في هذا الاجرام، عليش شو ضرب شو سوى لك هذا زم ار بي جي هذا قتلته، يعني انا 2 كنت معهم في الموقع واقف مش مساوي ولا شيء، يضرب رصاصه تطلع من ظهره ويستعمل له حفره في شو سوى له 17 سنه.
Over the course of the past 2 months, hundreds of Palestinians from Beita and the surrounding villages have been injured by Israeli forces during the protests. A significant amount of those injuries have been from live ammunition.
ليش تتوقع لحد الآن إنه مش خلينا؟
والله هذا رصاص حي،
هذا رصاص حي،
هذا رصاص حي، والله لما حدا تصوب ولا لا. رصاص حي قتل بطخ، ما بطخ يعني يخوف، كله قتل. كله قتل. طلع صور انت الشباب مش عاملين شيء، طلع كيف واقفين قاعدين بيطفوا في النار، يعني مش عاملين شيء الشباب. بطخ قتل ما فيش عنده يعني يخوفوا او لا، قتل الراس او على منطقة الصدرين.
The highest recorded number of injuries in a single day was in late May, when local medics said that more than 70 people were injured with live ammunition in the span of just a few hours.
يعني هنا تطلعي في يمكن عشرات الشبان مصابين بجريهم عكازات، يمكن شفتوهم انتوا جايين. عشرات بيجوا هين بيتضامنوا مع انهم متصابين، بيجوا ما فيش احنا الإرادة عندنا يعني كل يوم.
While we were filming Friday protests in Beita, at least 2 young men were shot with live ammunition, 1 in the leg and 1 in the face.
We're here at the local field hospital in Beita. You can see that there's people around us waiting. We just got word that there's quite a critical injury that's happened on Jabal Sabih. Someone was injured with live ammunition. So you can see here behind me that the first responders are waiting. They're waiting for the ambulance to get here so that they can treat the person who is injured. Again, this field hospital was set up by locals just in the past few weeks due to the sheer
number of injuries that have happened in Beita, the sheer number of injuries of live ammunition. People have been injured with tear gas canisters, rubber bullets. And the locals here tell us that there have been more than 1,000 injuries with live ammunition just in the past month and a half because of protests on Jabal Sabih. The Eviatar outpost was erected by a group of Israeli settlers who, under the protection of the Israeli military, have successfully occupied the mountaintop and dozens of acres of land around it. Under Israeli law, outposts like Eviatar are considered illegal as they are built without prior approval from authorities, unlike formal settlements which are built and subsidized by the Israeli government. Despite this, the settlers in Eviatar have continued to grow the outpost, erecting an estimated 45 caravans and prefabricated homes in just a few weeks. The Israeli government has also provided the settlers on the outpost with paved roads, water lines, and electricity.
طبعا بدي الفت النظر لقضيه مهمه انه حكومه الجيش الاسرائيلي والاحتلال الاسرائيلي اقرت بان هذه المستوطنه غير شرعيه، ومع ذلك يقمعون الشبان الفلسطينيين العزل بالرصاص الحي. قتلوا 5 أشخاص على هذه المنطقة بعد بدء الفعاليات، بالرغم من أنهم يعترفون بأنها مستوطنة غير شرعية. حكومتهم تعترف بأنها مستوطنة غير شرعية.
Many of the settlers in Eviatar have come from surrounding settlements and outposts in the area, including the Yitzhar settlement, home to some of the most notoriously violent settlers in the entire West Bank. Just a few kilometers away from Beita is the town of Duma, where in 2015 a group of Israeli settlers set fire to a Palestinian home, killing 3 members of the Dawabsha family, including an 18-month-old baby. The Palestinians in Beita fear that if the outpost remains on their land, the settlers will become more violent, and their families could suffer a fate similar to that of the Dawabshas.
زوران هذول سكان إتصهار. إتصهار معروفة يعني مثل كريات 4 بالخليل اللي بيها زوران. أحكام مستوطنة في الضفة الغربية. مستوطنين مش عاديين يعني عصابات مافيات.
يعني ممكن يعملوا أي
شيء مستعد بحكي لك فتح ثم محمد أبو خضير وضارب ثم بنزين أنا بيعملها هاي ما فيش حد يعملها.
خايفين ممكن تصير نفس الشيء في أولادكم إذا
أنا بقول هاي من بيتي هين يعني أنا ما بكرة بستدريش أطلع الشغل وأدشر المرة والأولاد هين وجيراني هناك نفس الشيء وكل هاي سكان المنطقة نفس الشيء.
The most recent protests in Beita are the latest in a long history of anti-settlement resistance in the town. Since 1988, the people here have successfully fought off a number of attempts by Israeli settlers to take over their land. Just last year, Israeli settlers tried to occupy another mountain in the town, called Jabal al-Urma, sparking massive protests in the area. On March 11, 2020, hundreds of Beita's residents, including women, children, and the elderly, held a peaceful sit-in on the mountaintop. They were attacked by Israeli forces, who fired tear gas, rubber bullets, and live ammunition at the crowds. Abdul Ghani Dwekat was here that day with his 22-year-old son, Islam.
كان نقطة استشهاد إسلام في هذه المنطقة.
استشهاد ابنك؟
نعم. كانت هنا خيمة، هاي مكان الخيمة وأثر الخيمة موجودة هون. فأحد كبار السن ويبلغ من العمر حوالي 70 سنة أصيب في مطاطة في صدره بالغاز، فأخذت محارم معي حتى أنقذه وأسعفه. خرجت وإذا بالناس يصيحون إسعاف 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 إسعاف، فوجدت إسلام موجود هنا. فما استطعت المقاومة، لا أدري ماذا يعني ما الذي حدث صحيح، ولكن الحمد لله جلست أخذت أصيح على الجندي قتلته. جلست بهذا الشكل وأخذت أصيح عليه، فضربني الرصاصتين هنا.
أنت تصوبت في نفس اللحظة اللي
لا زالت معي يعني موجودة أثرها، لا زال أثرها موجود، والحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله. طبعا استنينا تقريبا انه كان مانع الجيش مانع سيارة الإسعاف انها تصعد هون. كان جبات كثير جدا على الشارع، وقفت تقريبا، قعدنا هنا تقريبا 40 دقيقة حتى سمحوا للإسعاف إنه يجي. وكانت للأسف الإصابة شنيعة جدا، أصابه بتقريبا في منطقة صفر. هو أصيب برصاصتين مطاطيات كانت قاتلات، اخترقني الجمجمة، اخترقني الدماغ عنده، كانت وحدي هنا والثاني هنا، اخترقت الدماغ كامل.
Abdul Ghani joins a long list of parents in Beita whose children were killed by Israeli forces. Since 1967, 77 residents of the town have been killed by Israel, many of them during protests like the ones on Jabal al-Urma and Jabal Sabih.
شو شعورك اليوم لما بتشوف المواجهات على جبل صبيح وبتشوف كمان أولاد يعني الجيش يطلقوا عليهم النار والأولاد عمرهم 15-16 سنة؟
حقيقة لا أستطيع المقاومة في أني أتذكر اليوم اللي استشهد فيه إسلام. عندما أشوف أنه في شهيد يكون في عندي نوع من الإرباك، لا أستطيع التكلم. يعني في آخر شهيدين وقفت عن الكلام الحمد لله رب العالمين، يعني في عندي ناطقة وإني أتكلم أمام الناس، ولكن عند وجود الشهداء يعني تصبح الإنسان غير قادر على إنه يكمل كلمتين على بعض.
As the call to prayer rings through the town at sunset, the streets of Beita are practically empty. Most of the town's residents can be found making their way to Jabal Sabih for what they call the night of confusion.
هسه بنبلش من هان يمكن 50 متر وبعدها بننزل وين؟ ننزل تحت باتجاه الإرباك الليلي.
وشو هي الإرباك الليلي؟ اشرح لنا شوي عن الموضوع.
مشاعل، عجال، ولعوا، كل شيء.
وشو الفكرة ورا الإرباك الليلي؟
على أساس إنهم يزيلوا هاي البورة.
يعني إشي إزعاج للمستوطنين في الليل.
طبعاً ولا طبعاً هذا على أساس إنهم يزيلوا هاي البورة.
وهذا إشي بتصير كل ليلة عندكم؟
كل ليلة بصير طبعاً كل ليلة بصير.
Scattered across the mountain, the residents of Beita split into groups or teams, each one designated with a different task aimed at irritating and disturbing the settlers on the mountaintop. One team points lasers towards the outpost and Israeli troops stationed on the mountain, while other groups are tasked with blowing horns and making loud noises. And the rest, primarily young men, light torches and march down through the valley and set tires on fire to send smoke up towards the outpost.
بس هسه إذا بكربوا لفوق مشاعل، هسه إذا بتكرب كل ما تكرب لفوق بصير يضرب حي، رصاص حي.
رصاص حي بيضرب في الليل.
رصاص حي بيضرب. طلع كله شباب شيوخ.
شو بكون الشعور الناس لما بكونوا نازلين على الجبل؟
شعور لا يوصف، شعور لا يوصف. احنا بالنسبة لنا عندنا صار روتين، يعني شعور لا يوصف.
Miles from where the night confusions begin are other small groups of young men who get as close as they can to the outpost, where they face off against Israeli soldiers, armed only with rocks and homemade slingshots.
Right now, we're at one of the closest points to the settlement. It's about 400 meters away, and we're only around 200 meters away from where Israeli soldiers are stationed. You can see around me there are hundreds of young men who are lighting tires on fire, pointing lasers at the soldiers, making loud noises. This is all part of the night confusions. This is all part of the attempts from the young men, from the people in Beita, to continue protesting against the establishment of this outpost on their land. People here have come under fire from tear gas, from rubber bullets, from live ammunition, but they're still protesting. The noises, the reason they're screaming around us, this is part of their plan to annoy the settlers, to make the settlers leave and to make them want to leave their outpost.
وإن شاء الله بهمة الشباب وعزيمتهم وإرادتهم سينتهي هذا الاستيطان وسينتهي هذا الاحتلال وستقوم دولة فلسطين حرة مستقلة وعاصمتها القدس إن شاء الله. قولوا الله قولوا الله قولوا الله قولوا الله. هاي بيتا مش حي الله. هذه بيتا مش حي الله.
Hours into the night confusion activities, Israeli forces cracked down on protesters, using drones and military jeeps to fire tear gas, as well as rubber bullets and live ammunition.
The people here are fleeing the tear gas. You can see that there are hundreds of young men that started running from underneath. You can see they're covering their noses and their mouths. They were caught under dozens of rounds of tear gas from the Israeli soldiers, and now they're running away. They're retreating back up the mountain to get away from the tear gas.
Despite the violent response of Israeli forces to the protests, many families have continued to come to the mountain every single night for night confusion activities.
إنه إحنا ما بنحب أولادنا يموتوا ولا حدا بحب ابنه يموت. أنا ابني بدي إياه يكبر ويكون أسرة ويروح يدرس في الجامعة، وأنا ابني الأكبر منه بفكر السنة الجاي يروح يدرس بتركيا، بده يدرس طب، يصير دكتور إن شاء الله.
في عندهم أحلام في حياتهم.
أحلام اللي بقتل أحلامهم مش إحنا. ولا أنا اللي باكل، اللي بقتل أحلام
هذا الرصاص حي اللي سمعناه.
اللي بقتل أحلامهم الاحتلال.
Over the past few weeks, the protests in Beita have picked up steam and have drawn Palestinians from across the West Bank to join in solidarity. On this night, one group traveled from the city of Bethlehem to join in the night confusion activities, bringing their local youth drums team with them.
تجربة الإرباك الليلي هاي تجربة فريدة من نوعها، تجربة متميزة، والأهم من كل التجارب التقنية اللي قاعدة بتصير أنا باعتقادي البقاء والاستمرار حتى يعني دحر الاحتلال، وإنه هاي البؤرة الاستيطانية تزول عن أرض بيتا.
In late June, after weeks of protests, the Israeli government, led by its new Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, reached an agreement with the settlers of Eviatar. The agreement stated that the settler families who were present at the outpost would leave the houses they built, but the structures themselves would stay and be converted into a yeshiva school. None of Beita's residents nor the Palestinians who own land on Jabal Sabih were consulted about the agreement.
شو ردة فعل كل هذا القرار؟
أنا صراحة عصبت، إحنا ولا إشي رح يرضينا إلا إنه المستوطنة إن شاء الله ما بصير مستوطنة، إنها ترجع زي ما كانت شجر زيتون، بس هذا اللي بيرضينا. شعورنا طبعا غضب عارم، ما انبسطنا ولا من قرار من القرارات اللي حكوها من امبارح أول امبارح. إحنا هدفنا بإذن الله إنها تنجى لكل المستعمر، يعني أنا حكيت لهم إذا تركوا الكرفانات أولادنا بيطلعوا بيحرقوهن.
The people of Beita insist that whether it is in the form of a residential settlement or a school, the outpost is still illegal and must be removed from their land. Until that happens, they say they'll keep protesting, no matter the cost.
80% من الشباب عطلت عن أشغالها، لنا يمكن 50 يوم ما فيش شغل، بنشتغلش يعني خلص الشباب متمركزين 24 ساعة، ممنوع.
يعني هذا الأرض هذا الجبل هذا أهم من الشغل،
أهم من كل شيء، أهم من يعني أهم من الأشخاص اللي استشهدت. ما في إحنا هنا عندنا وما فيش مزح فيه، يعني أهم منا هذا الجبل. يعني يستشهدوا 10 20 30، أما ما يقعدوش هنا هذول، ممنوع. إحنا لا يمكن نتعايش معهم.